All right. My guest today is Shayna Teh, the co-founder of Food Market Hub. For those of you who don't know, Food Market Hub helps restaurants and suppliers to increase efficiency by centralizing all the F&B backend processes in just one app. Thank you very much for being here, Shayna.
Thank you for having me.
So I always ask as a starting point, I get fascinated by the origin story. So just take me back. How did you decide to be an entrepreneur in the first place? And how did you end up landing on the idea for Food Market Hub?
Oh wow. So I guess it all started when I was um if if I were to look back, it was more about uh the the way I have been brought up. My family is a family of entrepreneurs. My grandfather was an entrepreneur, my dad as well. And so I remember like when we were young, conversations at the table was also always about, oh, how is this business? How do you get this thing done? How can we make it into a business?
Hmm.
So I think as I grow up, it fascinates me when I look at businesses. And being an accountant by training, I have been looking at the books of, all businesses. And finally, one day I told myself that, I think, it's time that I get into, a business, get my hands dirty and try it out.
Hmm.
So I did some consulting work initially. And then after that, I decided to pursue the fashion business. I thought that would be something interesting, something that I can probably leverage on e-commerce. So that
Okay.
time it was a hype then. So I went into designing shoes, elevator shoes for men.
Okay.
So making men look more confident,
Okay. A little bit taller.
a little bit taller. Yeah, yeah. So and that whole business actually taught me a lot of things, how you planned to getting your ideas out. And then at the early stage, you had to do everything. And doing everything is not actually a good thing
Hmm.
because you need to start to learn how to delegate, get people in to help so that you can expand. So
Okay.
that journey. Then after that, I hit a roadblock because of capital. I was able to expand it to Singapore, getting a distributor in Singapore, Hong Kong, and London.
Hmm.
But as the orders grew and the minimum order required by workshops and factories gets even higher.
Yep.
So the capital, it's too much. And at that time, I think the funding fundraising scene is that, it's all a lot about tech.
Mm.
And and mine is not so much of tech versus, something that people are looking at. How do you scale, 10 times faster in
Yeah.
that sense? So after that, my partner was looking into opening up restaurants. And so I thought, okay, let's explore that. And we went into the restaurant business. Initially, when we first started, the first outlet, it was great. So we thought, okay, yeah, we had the right focus, the right product, the food. Then we thought, let's expand. So we did the second outlet, then the third outlet. That's when we were looking at it and said, hey, we see business coming in, it's good, but where's the money? It's like,
Mm.
show me the money. And then we look into it and realize that okay, I think we have to, shut it down because it's not going the right route. So we shut down and then we thought, what went wrong? So we did dive into it and we realized that okay, there are a lot of manual activities, and as you expand, it becomes intensified. Like all these things that you need to keep track,
Hmm.
especially if you have a central kitchen. And then looking at all this manual from procurement all the way to payments and all that. And then we thought, you know, if we were to do it again, how would we do it better? And then because my co-founder Anthony comes from a tech background, he was a software engineer in Intel. And then we were saying that, okay, let's look at the tech side of it, and maybe we can actually help even more restaurants from that perspective if we automate certain stuff from the back end. Which, if we look into the market, there are hardly any software that can cater for the small businesses, the small restaurants. If you have the bigger chains, they are probably using ERP. And so we thought, okay, let's try it out then. Let's use what we understood from, you know, the process of running these restaurants and put it into software and app that helps restaurants to streamline that process. And so that's how Food Market Hub is started.
Okay. I love the origin story because it's like being an entrepreneur is basically in your blood. It's what you discussed at the table. It's what was all around you, and so there's like this ingrained familiarity. So the aspect of like, you know, oftentimes people look at taking the entrepreneurial journey as very risky, and obviously it is. But when you're kind of face front to it and having those conversations, and then you kind of get into the accounting books and you take that journey, it starts to feel a little bit more familiar, yeah? Or no?
I would thought that it feels familiar, but when you are in that situation, when you're doing it, you're like, oh gosh, what am I doing? It's like, you know, finding your way through it. I guess the path, it can be exciting as well as intimidating at the same time because of so many unknowns and so many things that you are not familiar with. But probably from the books, it's familiar because we have seen it on paper, but not so much on really getting your hands dirty when you are doing it, going out there, talking to people, understanding the customers, fine-tuning the product and all. So those kind of stuff. I still remember when I flew to China for the exhibition, the expo, to look for workshops that would take small orders for my shoes. And I basically, like, there were thousands of it, booths, and I basically go by one, and each one of them says, no, our minimum order is a container. They have to walk out. I think after the fifth or sixth booth, I decided to walk in and says that I need 2 containers. How can we work this out? What are the prices to get info? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, going for the manufacturer side is quite a bit different. So you end up in the restaurant business. You end up realizing the pain point. You come up with essentially the groundwork for the idea of Food Market Hub. When you start building, when you guys decide, hey, let's move this idea forward, are you still operating the restaurant and kind of using it for your own purposes, or is this already after the fact where you've gotten out of the restaurant business and now you're moving on with something new?
Oh, we actually moved on to get something done so we can focus on it. So it's the same thing. We went in looking at, you know, crafting out the processes and then adding the tech side, but we weren't sure whether restaurants are willing to pay for it. And at that time, we were also just going out to each restaurant owners, talking to them, understanding their needs as well, not just ours. So we don't want to end up solving a problem that is ours, but we need to validate it to make sure that, okay, this is a common issue that restaurants are facing. So we spoke to a few and realized that, hey, this sounds familiar, and it could be something that we can solve. So that's how we moved from saying that, okay, let's do this to let's build this. and let's sell it.
Okay. Okay. And the idea is centered around kind of this market segment of you have multiple outlets, but perhaps you're not so big that you have an expensive, sophisticated ERP system, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because an ERP system would cost about 200,000-300,000. And for a restaurant with maybe 2-3 outlets, it's not necessary.
Right.
Yeah, to spend that kind of amount, or it's not even affordable to some extent.
Yeah, margins are not known for being dramatically high in the F&B business. So having an expensive system on the back end, you need to be able to justify the ROI on that, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So then take me forward. What you want to move forward with this, the idea. What does the MVP look like? Because there's a lot of things that you could include, but what did you include from day one?
Well, as you said, yeah, we could include a lot of things, but when we are selling, uh, giving out too many features may not be something that will attract people. As we as a user, we know that what we need is to make sure that it really helps operations and can get things done. So, what are the key features that is required that would say that when they look at the product and say, "Hey, okay, yeah, that's what I want. That's what it will help to reduce this number of hours, to reduce my costs, my wastage, and have this kind of cost savings." All the other small other added features comes in much later as good to have. So we would classify, okay, these are the key ones that will address the key issues that we were facing or most restaurateurs were facing. Then the good to have that, oh, if we have this, it will make it even better. So that comes much later.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then so you narrow that down and then you want to go out to market. What's kind of the step one, step two of getting your initial customers on board? Do you go to kind of family and friends who may be also in the business, or are you going outside of network? What's the process to go from 0 to 1 on the customer side?
Right. When we start businesses, I think our idea is that never go to family and friends first. Because if it doesn't work out, you might affect the relationship and all. And sometimes if you go to friends and family, they might felt obliged
Mm,
give you certain feedback that may may not be something that you can get the true honest feedback, right?
yeah.
And to me, I think the best is to really go out to people who do not know you. They would tell you straight to your face,
Mm,
this is not working, this is not what I want, this doesn't help. And this kind of feedback is important at the start. Instead of taking it as a rejection, it gives us assurance that, okay, this may not be the right track. Let's tweak it.
mm.
Let's remove this and put this in based on feedback that we get.
Right.
Yeah.
So the feedback you're going to get is less biased because they don't feel obligated personally or otherwise to perhaps be more friendly about it.
Yeah. Yes. That's right. So I think it's important to get those unbiased feedback. So
Yeah.
it helps you to move forward to the right step.
Okay. How do you track them down in the first place? Like when you need to find, I'm assuming with this that you may be trying to find the restaurant owner or perhaps some sort of manager, because if you're talking about like a 3 restaurant, 5 restaurant chain sort of situation, I'm envisioning, and correct me if I'm wrong, the owner probably is a pretty high touch control over what's going on. So I'm assuming that's your point of contact when you're selling. How do you find them? Are these type of people already pretty well known within the ecosystem?
Well, I mean, if you want to find the right person, it's not difficult. You
Mm,
can search, you go out, even to the extent I remember that I would go to the restaurants, talk to the branch manager, understand what he's doing. When is his boss coming into the restaurant? You know, going in there at the right time.
Yeah.
So there are so many ways to get to the right person if you are determined to find that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you just need to get out and start talking to people, right? You just need to get out there, and maybe not in the peak of the lunch rush or something like that. Maybe a little off hour.
yeah, off hours. I remember we would time ourselves like after lunch in between where the restaurants would probably around 3 o'clock. It's where they close their kitchen. The chefs are resting. Sometimes the owner would be there. Sometimes he may not. So we just need to try our luck and then go in, chit chat, understand, come back again, move on to the next restaurant. Of course, then as we build our network, you get referrals, you get people saying, "Oh, okay, yeah, my friend is running a restaurant. Maybe he might be interested," and that's how we keep getting more and more business owners that we can meet. Yeah.
Is the referral network pretty strong on this? Do a lot of the restaurant owners kind of talk to each other and kind of do referrals on this sort of product?
There are a network of restaurant business owners that are pretty close knitted in the Klang Valley, and they would recommend to each other sometimes certain products, certain services, and all that. So it's easy if you can tap into the network, build on the relationship. So for us is one of the key things is because when our product acquires a customer, let's say restaurants would then capture all their suppliers to the system. So they would order to the suppliers, and when they send out their purchase orders to suppliers, it would say powered by Food Market Hub. So even F&B suppliers, after a while, where you have like so many restaurants using us and they keep seeing our logo on that piece of paper.
Yeah.
We get familiar as well. And some were curious and that they reach out and asked about us.
Yeah. Very, very, very interesting. I mean, it's a smart move in order to make sure that your logo stays on those sorts of materials, because that's essentially like a marketing mechanism as well. Because as you just noted, the suppliers are seeing it. Maybe that supplier is going to talk to one of their other F&B that perhaps they have a good relationship with, but know that they struggle on some of those back end stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So this kind of referral network is crucial. That's why hence at the early stage we don't spend a lot on marketing, but it is through this network that helps us grow. And there are a lot of ways as well in terms of making this network stronger. So we would be looking at what kind of network effect that help.
Okay.
So,
Okay. So is it fair to say that in the beginning days, the kind of the two main mechanisms were like the good old fashioned knocking on doors, showing up at that 3 o'clock time period, talking, finding the point of contact, doing the old fashioned like sales led approach, and then number two, making sure that you're kind of nurturing the different manners in which a referral network can go, whether it's restaurateurs talking to each other, keeping your logo on, documentation for the suppliers, etc. Those are the two main ones that you're using in the beginning, yeah?
right.
And is it still the case?
Right now, even when restaurants send out POs, it would have that powered by Food Market Hub. What we are now enhancing is in the app. How do we make it better? So in that sense that when they send out the POs, if the suppliers are not on our platform, but there's links where they could click to get in to say that, oh, they are interested, or they could click in to sign up so that they can capture, the orders better rather than on paper.
Yeah.
So there are some other mechanisms in place to enhance that user journey.
Okay. Okay. And then so as far as your sales operation goes, you're still so when you I mean we'll get to how you've expanded further, but for the most part you're handling outbound plus inbound. So you're still going out knocking on doors, and then you're still kind of receiving interest, whether it's through the website, through phone calls in. Those are still the most active channels.
Yeah. Especially at the early days, knocking doors, it's
Yeah.
inevitable to
Yeah.
build that kind of, that branding and awareness.
Sure. Okay. So at what point when you're building, do you look at it and say, we've got product market fit here. Let's accelerate this faster. Let's start investing in growth and really trying to move fast. What's kind of the trigger point when you look back?
I would say that, at a point where when we keep reaching out and we keep getting feedback and say that, oh, yeah, that's what we need.
Mm-hmm.
And not giving out as a free product helps as well, because that signals people are willing to pay to use your service. So at the start, we started all the way charging for the software. So there were not like trying to give out free apps, free trials just to try, but really pitching and then getting them to get excited and wanted to pay for the service.
Yeah.
And as this user base grow, we see that, hey, look, this is something that we could make it even bigger.
Okay. How does the customer feedback component play into your product development? We talked about features before, and how has that interaction with your customers driven your new feature releases?
Interesting. So we do have a customer success team where they would service the existing customers, and in there it would capture, some of the queries that comes in. So whether is it, an inquiry about a new feature, or is it, inquiry just to use the app. And when you gather and compile all this feedback, right, we would, at the early stage, we would look into it and say that, do we need to build this? Should we build this? And if we build this, how much time do we need? And is it an add-on, or do we charge? So these are some of the little things that comes into play when we look at building an additional feature. So at the early stage, I remember it was a lot more about because after having the MVP with the core functions, then it's about how to make these core functions better so that users can expand their usage. And so the decision of adding features is always about how does it tie back to the core functions and enhancing it so that it gives the user more value, rather than adding feature that is good to have because one or two restaurants request for that.
Yeah.
So we try to filter those out and focusing on the core. So always go back to the core feature and see how it can add value.
Yeah, there's a bit of a kind of a little bit of a trap that I've seen some founders get into, where you may have one large client that starts requesting something, but that client may not be representative of all the other customers that you have. And so sometimes I've seen people get into this mode of like, well, they want to pay us for it, we might as well start developing it, even though it's not applicable to the broader range. So you just spent your finite resources chasing something that is really only single customer use case. It kind of sounds along the same lines of what you're talking about, is making sure that you're coming back to that core and then building back out from that.
True. Yeah. So we at the early stage, I wouldn't say we didn't fall into that trap. We did look at certain big customers and they said they want to, customize this, do that. And we were saying that, okay, they are willing to pay. Are we willing to spend resources to build that, or do we want to build on this core and scale? So there were also times when we were considering cash flow, or do we want to reject that and do it? So I think it depends also at what stage your business is. Sometimes at the early stage, if the subscription model is, I would say, it is still not sustainable enough, then some small customizations, I believe we did some as well, just to make sure that we have some cash generated. But as we grow, especially after we get funding, then it is really pure focus saying that, no, look, customization is not the way we are moving towards, because we are moving from being a software company into a SaaS company, and we should look at the broader picture. So we don't have the worries about cash flow and all that. Then that's all about building the right product, making sure that it fuels growth.
Yeah. No, I love that. Let me ask another question on a related topic. When you're in those early days, there's always the question of, what do I charge? How do I figure out that price discovery? Because, obviously you want to test it out and see if people are willing to pay, but then how do I put a number on that? And am I fixed on that number for the rest of my life?
Yeah, that's a tough one too. We were looking at it. I remember we were saying that, oh yeah, how much should we charge? How much are they willing to pay? So initially it was really also trial and error through discussions, and some are willing to pay and say, oh wow, okay, yeah, that's fine, great. But some would come back and negotiate. So it's about looking at the price range, because we do not have a direct competitor. So we were benchmarking against similar apps or software in the F&B industry, and then said that, okay, this is our value here, and this is more or less the market pricing for the other apps. So could we price at this? And we just basically try and test it out. And then from there as well, we needed to also build our projection to see whether, does it make sense if we keep charging this at this rate? Can we break even? So it was very very focused on, can we break even? Can we sustain ourselves?
Right.
Because that's the stage where we do not have funding yet.
Sure.
And it's always about being able to survive. Then we can go, and grow the business. Yeah.
Right. I mean, you need positive unit economics. You need enough profit off of each individual sale, because you need to be able to cover that overhead so that you can continue on. I mean, once you get venture funded, the dynamics change a little bit, because oftentimes you're kind of dumping a lot into growth in order to accelerate it. But let me ask that question on the funding side. At what point in time do you feel that it was the right time in order to go out and get funded for the first time?
Oh, it started off, actually, to be honest, it started off as a conversation with a group of people, and then understanding that, hey, this there is funding from government, so government grants, and then we found out about Magic, the accelerator program. So all this actually helps. And in Magic, we learn about pitching investors, VCs, private equity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the time when it is like an eye-opener. And that's the time when we say, okay, look, hey, there's the opportunity for us to grow further. Let's take this step forward then.
Mm-hmm.
We do not want to be stuck in an environment where we are too comfortable. And then, in the tech industry, if you are too comfortable and there's not much change, that means you're moving backwards.
Yeah.
So I think that was a good way to push us forward and place us in the startup community. And that's when our journey of being a startup, fundraising, changing our whole model from a software SME company to looking at being a startup. How do we grow from here? How do we get the funding so that we can take the right next steps?
Right. It brings with it a set of expectations, because now you've got, financial partners on board that are going to be asking particular questions that are related to that. So it does kind of change relative to being a bootstrap. I mean, the intent is still successful business, yeah?
Yep. So definitely the expectations is different. Once you have more shareholders in, and they are, VCs where they are expecting, 10 times growth. And so how do we manage it from that perspective? So it's not just about, generating profit now. It's about how do we grow further? How do we get into a bigger market? Do we expand now, or do we still stay in our own market? So these are decisions that we need to make. And what else aside from subscription revenue? What are the other revenue streams that could come in together with this core product that you're offering? So these are the next level of considerations in the business.
Yeah. So let's talk about the market one, because that's a really fascinating one, because Malaysia is a relatively small population market, so the number of customers that are available in this market is definitely capped. When you look at getting a bigger market, how do you make that decision and say now's the right time? And I know everyone has different viewpoints on this, but I'm just kind of curious of how you view that.
For us is that when we were looking at our market in Malaysia, I think the first thing that always came to our mind when we were discussing is that does the restaurant community know us enough yet? Do we stand out in this community here in Malaysia? If not, then maybe we should work more in this market, get a stronghold, and build a strong base before we go out. Because at the time when we had funding, we also saw other startups in the similar F&B space where they were expanding, to Vietnam, to Philippines, Thailand, Indonesia. And when we look at ours, I guess for us is that we said, instead of spreading our resources thin, focusing on so many countries, we should still maintain to build up a strong base in Malaysia first. Get a market share that we think it's enough for us to build that base, and then we go out. So we have a successful use case that we can see in Malaysia, a strong one, then we go out. Otherwise, we are just shooting blindly in other markets.
Yeah.
We don't get our market share in Malaysia and fix that first.
Sure.
And I think we did make the right choice, because after 2-3 years, we see, those startups, they start to scale back and shut down some of their operations in other countries. And when we talk to the founders, we understand the issues from that, and we realize that, okay, going slow is at that time is not a bad move. We should make sure that the foundation is right before we jumped out. But of
Yeah.
course, I think there are other people thinking that, okay, you need to grow, it needs to be fast, go and capture
Yeah.
the market fast. But then I think it falls back to how fast can you go and
Yeah.
how much cash can you burn to support that kind of
Yeah.
growth.
Yeah. I mean, I'm all for growing fast, right? But I think we're aligned on the aspect of like you need to be able to demonstrate a product market fit and demonstrate that you have a go-to-market strategy. Otherwise, when you start expanding outside of your near sphere, you can end up burning a lot of cash and be a little bit inefficient. And so it can be rather problematic in order to go too far too quickly without getting that foundation. Yeah.
Yeah, and especially in Southeast Asia, having the right GTM in Malaysia doesn't mean it is the right one in Indonesia, even
Yeah.
though we are, by nature, Asian countries, similar values and cultures, but there are still differences within all these countries. And each time you expand, it's a whole new learning curve,
Yeah.
understanding the people, getting the trust from them. So
Yeah.
that takes up a lot of resources
Okay.
and time.
Do you find that when you do expand internationally that the product market fit is pretty much okay? When you expand internationally, it's really just that go-to-market strategy that requires the most amount of modification for the particular nuances of each geography.
Yeah, so before we expand, we did do some research, talking to people in similar industries in different markets, understanding that whether there is this similar problem. So because the suppliers is very fragmented in Southeast Asia, so we see that trend there versus in the US or in Australia, these developed countries where they have a big market in itself, but they also have very strong players there, like few key suppliers. So when you order, it is just ordering to two or three major suppliers.
Right.
So it's not so much of a pain point there that we see that is very crucial versus what we see in Southeast Asia is that the pain point is about when you use WhatsApp to order to 20, 30 suppliers, it's a headache because of just managing the WhatsApp chat and ensuring, that orders the data itself, the admin work that is required. So this core pain point is reflected in a lot of different countries in Southeast Asia. And so we know that, okay, there is one good point that we can go in and capture, the market and solve that problem.
Okay. And do you find that when you do make the market entry, that there's a similar sort of process as when you initiated here in Malaysia, that the starting point is really like go out and start knocking on doors. First and foremost, you have to do that sales led and just start talking to people.
The knocking on doors is something that is inevitable because we really need to speak with someone and understand. But the good part is because when you expand, you already have some marketing strategy in place to help push that to help you get leads to come in and you can reach out to them. So there is a blend of both, but I would say it is no longer those kind of founder-led kind of sales where you have to knock on each door and all that. It's a better process.
Yeah, you no longer have to be individually going out to every single market knocking on doors yourself anymore. Now you're in a fortunate position where you can have people for that.
Yeah. And so the team, getting the right team on the ground, and being able to pass on that product knowledge and them understanding the pain point is important, that they
Okay.
go out and speak to the right customers.
Okay. Let me ask you something on that team aspect of this. And there's really two questions that I have. The first question is more of like, what's your starting point when you build a team? Do you start with kind of like the individual contributor level of getting a sales team, or do you start and try and get a country manager? And then I guess the second aspect of it is, most times when we talk talent, we talk about the lack of tech talent, and that's kind of the general theme in startup land. But what oftentimes doesn't get noted, but I know that is a problem, is the difficulty of finding good salespeople and good customer success teams that really kind of understand and empathize with the customers. Tell me a little bit about what your own personal experiences and how you went about it.
Right. So the team that we built at the early stage is more about, getting the right people in to be able to execute our ideas. And at that time, it was really about, having these people that can manage it can be individual contributors, it can be a team lead to help. So that was the early stage when we built. But as we grow, we needed more leadership people to come in to help us grow. Because I think for us, there are also limitations. As a founder, we would only have certain skill sets that we can do well, but we are weak in other areas. And that's when we need to find the right people, the right manager to come in and complement those skill sets. And in terms of whether we get a country manager right from the start, that means going into the expansion phase. What I realize is at each phase, sometimes we need to make a decision whether do we hire in a senior person at this early stage, or do we hire a mid manager who can be more hands-on. So there is a dilemma sometimes, and there's no right or wrong answer. It depends on which stage. So at a certain stage, sometimes when we hire too senior in, and they don't have the hands and legs there, so just being too high level doesn't help. Especially when you are in a startup, we need the leaders to be able to really go down to the ground and coach some of the team members. Yeah. And so I think for us is at that different stage, we keep asking, what can this person contribute? What is the value in it? And how hands-on can this person work with the team?
Okay.
Then, yeah.
Okay.
Then in terms of your question about, talent, like the sales guys or that. An interesting thing is when we move from the angle of just selling a software versus trying to scale as a SaaS company, because there are not many SaaS companies in Malaysia. And the knowledge of these people viewing how they should sell can be different because of their background. And if this guy has been selling software and customized software, they would come back and say that, if you don't build this feature for me, I can't close the deal. So there needs to be a mindset shift, and it's on us to really teach them and let them know, educate them about the differences between how we operate in a SaaS business as opposed to, a normal software company.
Okay. So looking forward, what's next? When you try and think of like the next few years, what's next, and like what does success actually mean?
Interesting. To us, we often sit down in the leadership team as well, talking about this. What does success mean? I guess one basic point is that for me and my co-founder, our vision is that when a person wants to open up a restaurant, the first thing that came into their mind usually is, oh, I need a POS. So instead of just thinking that, oh, because I need a POS system, the next thing they would also think of is that, oh, I need Food Market Hub because I need, the ordering management. I need to handle all the food cost wastage. And, we are offering financing now as well to restaurants. So that could help in my working capital.
Okay. So like invoice financing with the suppliers, is it? Okay. Very interesting.
Yeah. So that's what we want to achieve to that level.
Okay. Very cool. Let me wrap up here. This has been a great conversation. We've navigated a lot of points here, but let me wrap up with my typical closing questions. The first one of these is, what is a tech tool that you just cannot live without?
Right. We use Slack, especially in this, hybrid model now. Every day it is about looking at Slack.
Okay.
The communication tool for the whole company.
Yeah. It's become so ingrained into so many different companies out there. It's hard to live without being able to have those asynchronous communications, store documentation, keep track of things. Definitely. Last question here. If you were to talk to another founder that's just getting started out, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you could offer?
Right. If you believe in your dream, don't let the noise out there stop you from trying it. Work on it every day, little bit by bit, to see some results, to work towards that dream. Yeah, because the noise out there might drown you out. But if you truly believe in your product and you truly have that dream, just do it.
I love that advice. If you believe in it, just do it. Ignore the noise that's out there. Shayna, this has been a phenomenal conversation. I'd learned so much from you. I'm really grateful that you came out and spoke with me today.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me. It's a pleasure to share.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, that wraps it up for another fantastic episode of the Sea of Startups. If you've enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. Go onto iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts and leave us a review. It's the best way for us to get discovered and to have these startup stories reach a broader audience. If you have any suggestions or would like to get in touch, you can email me at kevin@indelible.vc. As always, I'm your host, Kevin Brocklin from Indelible Ventures, and this is the Sea of Startups.